Welcome everyone to our watch party and panel discussion of the Netflix smash hit film series, Surviving Death. I am your host, Deborah Poneman, and tonight we will have an opportunity to hear from several esteemed guests, as you could see on your screen. I'm going to be telling you more in depth about each of our panelists before they speak, but I'd just like to say welcome to them right now. Leslie Kean, investigative journalist and author of the book Surviving Death, on which this film was based. Kimberly Clark Sharp, who is a near-death experience survivor. Hi, Kimberly, and the founder of the Seattle chapter of IONS. Those of you who don't know what IONS is, it's an acronym for the International Association for Near-Death Studies. Kimberly also appears in the film. You'll see her in the clip that we'll be showing later. Jose Hernandez, who is the founder of Interimmersion and one of the featured near-death experiencers in the Netflix series. And we'll also be joined via pre-recorded message by Ricky Stern. So she's not going to wave to you, but she is the founder of Breakthrough Films, and she is the executive director of Surviving Death. And we'd also like to welcome our three sponsors that we are so grateful to and so glad that you're here with us. John Kurth, who is the executive director of the Rhine Research Center, who is nodding very graciously. Thank you, John, for being here. And Jenny Wedby, who is the director of marketing and communications for the Monroe Institute, and also Jim Fisher, who is one of the co-founders of Consciousness Cafe. So thank you so much for being a part of this and for sponsoring this event. And again, I'm Deborah Poneman. I am the founder of Yes to Success Seminars, and it's an honor to be hosting this event tonight. And you are all here, and I've been watching you sharing where you're from. Actually, put in the chat right now. We have Jacqueline from the Netherlands. We have Anna from North Carolina. We have Jim. Oh, it went too fast. So I don't know where Jim was from. Doris from Massachusetts, Vancouver, Florida, New Jersey, California, Tennessee, Colorado, the UK, Canada, North Carolina, again, Philadelphia, Raleigh, Huntsville, Alabama, Greensboro. Oh my goodness, it's going too fast. Ohio, Kissimmee, Florida, North Carolina, again, that's very cute that you put again. Steve Smith from Texas, so many wonderful people. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And after we hear Vermont, Sussex, UK, from the Chicago suburbs, my hometown, and after we hear from each of our panelists, we're going to watch clips from the first episode of the Netflix series. And then you are going to get a chance to ask your questions of our panelists. So for those of you who this is the first time you're hearing about the Netflix movie, Surviving Death, I guess it's been about a month. Is that right, Jose, since the film was first released? Just about a month. We can't hear you. But
yeah, it was released January 6th, so it's been exactly a month.
Exactly a month. How do you like that? Okay, it has actually become quite a cultural phenomenon. And it's so beautiful because it's furthering the mission of bringing the knowledge to the world that life does not end when our bodies stop breathing. And our panel members know this, and it's quite exciting to be able to share some of that evidence in the film that life does not end when the heartbeat stops. But I believe what you're going to find even more exciting is the emotional impact and the transformation that's occurred, I know, in Jose's life. And I think about half of our people on our panel today have had near-death experiences themselves. And so And it's beautiful to hear the knowledge that they brought back from the other side. And I think right now at this time in creation, it's really important to have other perspectives about this not being the only reality, because I think our world needs a shift. And I think that this is a way that the consciousness of the world is going to shift. So I'd like to thank our panelists for taking the time to be with us. And I'd like to give them each a proper introduction, pose a question to each. And as I said, then we'll watch the film clip, and then we will have open Q&A, which I'm sure some very interesting things will come out. So first, I'd like to introduce independent investigative journalist and author of the book Surviving Death, Leslie Kean. Now, Leslie is not only a journalist and the author of the award-winning book Surviving Death, and you see a picture of it on your screen. A journalist investigates evidence for an afterlife. She's also the author of the New York Times bestseller UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. Interesting, right? And in fact, Leslie co-authored a series of breakthrough art stories about UFOs and the Pentagon and the Navy for the New York Times, and has contributed dozens and dozens of articles for other publications here and abroad, and was a consulting producer for Surviving Death. So Leslie, so happy to have you here. I've heard you speak before, and I always find you incredibly fascinating. And can you share with us what inspired you to write your book on surviving death, and on which this film is based?
Thanks, Deborah. It's wonderful to be here with everybody. Okay, I'm going to watch the clock. So, you know, as you mentioned, I've been reporting on UFOs for a long time. Actually, it's been about 20 years now. But I always was interested in this question also, because these are both really big human questions. You know, I sort of consider them the two big questions: are we alone in the universe, and what happens after death? But so anyway, I was always poking around in this as a journalist. During my time with UFOs, I got really interested in cases of reincarnation of small children, which were documented by Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia Medical School, the Division of Perceptual Studies. And Jim Tucker is now the psychiatrist that's taken over that work. And I found those cases really fascinating and very kind of black and white and factual. You know, you could look at the memories and you could see if they were verified, and very hard to explain. So that sort of opened a door to me into all of this. And then after my UFO book came out, my publisher said, would you like to write something else? And this seemed like the absolute obvious topic for me to jump into, because I'd always been interested in it. And so I kind of learned as I went along. I mean, with the UFO book, I had been studying it for so long that it was kind of a culmination of what I already knew. But this book was a journey that I went on as I was writing it. And not only did it involve research, you know, academic kind of intellectual research, but it involved research that was experiential for me, such as having readings with mediums. And then I lost my brother during the time I was writing the book, very unexpectedly. So there were a lot of after-death communications that came to me from him. This was all nothing I ever would have expected. So it turned out to be a kind of an interweaving of very solid evidence from a lot of different research areas, including, you know, near-death experiences, but other things as well, that I feel like all kind of build on each other and all point towards the same thing. And that's what I was trying to draw out in bringing all this evidence in. And then I also wove in my own experiences. So yeah, the book came out so I'm still on that journey. I always will be. Still a lot more I want to learn. And having then I got involved with the series on Netflix, which was really exciting to do. It's in some ways very different than my book, but they really balance each other very well. And I'm thrilled with the work that Breakthrough Films did. So I think that probably is more than the time I'm supposed to talk for. So I'll stop.
Well, thank you, Leslie. And you'll have more time later to ask Leslie questions. And I have to share with you that I love the work that you do with children who so innocently they report that things that happen to them that are unexplainable. And I actually had this one, I'll share a very short experience. I'm a meditation teacher. And one time I was teaching a little girl meditation, her little walking meditation technique. And she was about 5 years old. And there was a picture of my spiritual master up on this table. And I gave this little girl her mantra, a very specific sound. And I gave her the mantra. She looked at me, she says, "You know what, Deborah? That's the same sound that that man gave me a long time ago when I had a different mommy and daddy."
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, just imagine a case where that child gives you like 10 specific facts and you're able to go and find out who they actually were in that previous life. And you see that everything matches, everything's true. That's really phenomenal.
I might have to do that because I know the spiritual teacher who was dead, who had been dead for about 60 years at the time that little girl said that. So
most kids don't remember that much. It's kind of rare to have a case where there's enough specifics that you can find the previous person. And then you can't find them by asking the kid. They're usually kind of tormented by the whole thing and they'll volunteer this information. But just anyway, we can talk more about it later.
yeah, so we have so much to talk about. Yeah. So thank you, Leslie, dear. Okay, so next we have Kimberly Clark Sharp. And Kimberly, I have her bio over here. She's an international conference and workshop speaker. She's also a near-death experiencer, cancer survivor, and a retired clinical assistant professor at the School of Social Work at the University of Washington. She's also the founder of Seattle IONS. You remember what that is? International Association of Near-Death Studies, which is the world's oldest support group for near-death experiencers. She's also the author of, as you can see right there, After the Light, The Spiritual Path to Purpose. So, my dear Kimberly, now we need Kimberly up on the screen. And before I ask you or you speak about IONS and your own near-death experience, why don't our viewers, just so we know, our listeners, write in the chat if you've had a near-death experience? That would be interesting for you to write that in the chat. If you've had a near-death experience, and if you have, what was it? Was it, after drowning? Was it during an operation? Maybe there aren't any people, but we just thought that would be interesting to know. But now, why don't you share with us, Kimberly, a little about your own experience and a little bit about IONS?
Thank you. I also want to draw attention to the fact that I'm wearing red today. Today is Wear Red Day to draw awareness to women's heart disease, which as a woman, and because heart disease takes the lives of more women than any other health problem, it's important to me. Also, I had a staggering 1.5-hour resuscitation without a heartbeat when I was a young woman. And so the subject means something to me. So I just want to give Red a shout out today, and I won't wear my red nose, but that's in June. Anyway, I collapsed for unknown reasons at the Shawnee Mission, Kansas DMV with my dad, and volunteer firefighters arrived first before an ambulance from a trauma center in nearby Kansas City, Missouri. And they had a brand new portable ventilator they attached, creating a seal over my nose and mouth, and turned it on. But this Anderson ventilator, portable ventilator, had 2 features: to ventilate, of course, but also to vacuum in case there was something blocking the airway. That's why we were told, children don't run with candy in your mouth. Or it's called a cafe coronary if it's an adult in a restaurant who gets lettuce caught in. Well, anyway, boo-boo, they had it on extract. So whatever oxygen was left in my body immediately got sucked out. I have a long history working in intensive care units, and know now that when our lungs come in contact with each other, they're sticky suckers, literally, and they have to be separated under metered professional guidance in an intensive care unit. That didn't happen. They figured out there had been a mistake and they pushed air in rather violently, and the air had to go somewhere, so it went to my skin, and that's called epithelial emphysema. I don't get to say that very often, so sorry about that. Anyway, then it was over. Obviously, but resuscitation did continue. I had so much oxygen in my body. For those who wonder, well, how can you live without oxygen that long? You can't. And by the way, I've never interviewed a corpse, and I don't want to. So my brain was still getting oxygen, and I hate to give away the good ending to another good book, but she lived. So if you read After the Light, shh, but she lived. And lived to found the Seattle International Association for Near-Death Studies. I invite everyone listening to go to www.ians.org, which is the be all and end all for information on the subject of near-death experiences. But when I started Seattle IANS in 1982, quite a while ago, I was already well known because I had found a shoe on a ledge identified by one of my patients on intensive care at Harborview Medical Center in Seattle. And that was an electrifying story and remains an electrifying story. The shoe on the ledge, look that up. But also needed a support group for people like myself who had after effects to this day, which include, seeing dead people. I'm funded a funeral. What we call angels, scary invisibilities, orbs, lucid dreams, out-of-body experiences. Shout out to Monroe Institute. The many, many after effects that are confusing and do need a place where people can safely get support, comfort, and mainly love. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to look up that shoe. You have to, if there's a URL, look up the shoe experience. I keep hearing it referred to, and I still don't know what it is. And I want to tell you, there have been so many people. I thought there would be one or two who would say they had a near-death experience, and you have to, all of you have to scroll down. There are so many people, operations and drowning, and somebody had like 5 different near-death experiences. It's very fascinating. And some people explained it in depth, what happened to them. And now we're going to hear from Ricky Stern. Now, Ricky, again, could not be here, but live, but she is the founder of Breakthrough Films. And Breakthrough Films is an award-winning film and television production company. It's based in New York City. It's known for really kind of cutting edge cinematic journeys. And she has done documentaries on criminal injustice, to Darfur, to stand-up comedy, to celebrity culture. But everything Ricky does is centered on unforgettable people and remarkable experiences. So to emphasize that she creates her films based on unforgettable people and remarkable experiences, Ricky is the executive director of Surviving Death, which is just filled with remarkable people and experiences. So we do have a few little different clips of Ricky. So Dawn, can you please roll the first clip of Ricky answering her first question?
Breakthrough Films has focused on topics that shine a spotlight on issues that affect society, giving the audience insights and perspective to consider new viewpoints and encourage discussion. What was it about Leslie's book, Surviving Death, that made you think you'd like to tackle this fringe subject?
That is an interesting question. Well, I guess first, I know Leslie because I worked with her on her previous book, which is about UFOs on the record. And it's a serious look at government officials who report, and police officers and who report UFOs. And so that book we translated into a 2-hour special for the History Channel. And when this book came out, I read it and thought it's such an interesting topic, this notion of consciousness that can live on outside of the physical body, that and in particular Leslie's perspective on it, which was a serious look at something that I think people, have fun with, and they think is kind of a fringe, as this question asked, fringe topic, and can be sort of woo-woo. She did a deep dive into the people who are looking at it and taking it seriously, and there are doctors and scientists and researchers, and that was intriguing to me. But I'm not someone who was particularly interested in the topic, and so again, I thought, if I'm interested in this, because I'm not someone who's necessarily going to mediums or is curious about this, then I would think that there's a large audience out there of people who are curious. And so it was that, and then I took it to Netflix in a very casual way, because my film partner and I had a film with Netflix, and they were very interested.
Okay, so that is just the first thing that Ricky has to share with us. And now we're going to go ahead, and I misunderstood. I thought there was going to be video, but apparently there is just audio. So from what I hear from the chat, you got to look at me during that time. I am not Ricky. Anyway, so now I'm going to introduce to you John Kruth, or is it Kruth? I want to say it properly, but when you come on, John, you will tell me, or you could tell me now.
It's Kruth.
Like the truth.
Yes.
John Kruth tells the truth, which is very appropriate, because John is the, I have his bio over here, is the executive director of the Rhine Research Center and the founder and education director of the Rhine Education Center. His 20 plus years of professional technology experience and 10 plus years as a professional researcher provides a unique insight into the integration of technology and parapsychological research. His research, as well as his publications and speeches around the world, include explorations into the subtle energies of the body, including psychic healing, the energy behind psychokinesis, poltergeist activity, and other unconscious effects on electronic devices. Oh, we're going to ask you questions about that later. And measurements of biophotons, which is ultraviolet light, from energy healers, okay? And John's current projects include the development of a community of PSI. What is PSI experiencers? Psychic phenomenon?
It's Psi, which is ESP psychokinesis combined together.
Very good. Okay. At the Rhine Institute and worldwide through the use of technology. And I understand that at the Rhine Institute, you provide online courses and speakers and really professional and scientific parapsychological, would you call it proof? Maybe I could ask you that right now. Why don't you just share with us, John, how you first became interested in matters of consciousness, especially the continuation of consciousness after the body experiences death, and how the Rhine Institute contributes to the world, of this type of knowledge.
Well, it's interesting. Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate it. But it's interesting that when you ask how I got involved with it, it's kind of been a lifelong, it's been something I've been doing my whole life. And I didn't understand why everyone wasn't doing it also. And when I spoke to them, they kind of got scared or weirded out by it. And so just by having a conversation with them, I realized I had to find a way to describe it in a way that in some way they understood it. This is where I started, when I found out about the Rhine, that's when I started saying, wow, this looks like a perfect way for me to start to learn about it and learn ways to speak to people. I often tell people that I'm kind of a translator. I try to bring scientific language to these experiences that we have, and also to take these experiences, people who have these experiences, and help them to understand that every time that they know who's calling on the phone, that doesn't mean they're psychic. There's different things we have to consider related to these things. The Rhine, though, has been around since, it's the oldest operating parapsychology lab in the country. It's been around since 1935. It started at Duke University. And we've been doing scientific research on ESP, psychokinesis, and general consciousness studies for the entire time. Now, some people ask, why do you think that this is an important series for people from the Rhine to watch? You know, I actually exchanged some emails with Leslie last night, and as I was watching the series, I was recognizing my friends. I was seeing people that I know, like Laurel Lynn Jackson, Lloyd Auerbach. They're both on my board of directors. We speak to each other quite often. Chris Rowe is head of the Society for Psychic Exploration. We have many conversations. The Forever Family Foundation. Many of the people who are involved with that series are people that I know and people who have been associated with the Rhine for years. And when J.B. Rhine originally started the Rhine Research Center, it was actually a Duke Parapsychology Lab in the 30s, he was trying to determine if there was a way to demonstrate survival after death. It was something that he felt was really important for the human condition, for us all to understand. But he recognized very quickly that in order to do that, we first have to understand the limits of human abilities. This is where he started to look into ESP and started to look into psychokinesis. Because if you can explain things using standard human abilities, then it may or may not support the idea of survival after death. So the Rhine consistently explores consciousness and consistently tries to understand the connections between everyone, then all the people on the planet, and as Leslie was saying earlier, even people off planet. We want to try to understand all these connections. It's something we search for. And this series really explores that, and the Rhine audience really explores that as well.
Thank you so much. And I'm really interested in personally in looking into some of the courses. The courses at the Rhine are offered to the public, yes?
Yes, and in fact, we have some that are starting just next week. And so you can go to rhine.org and see some of the listings of the courses we have coming up.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, John. And next we have Jenny Wedby, who is the Director of Marketing and Communications for the Monroe Institute. And the Monroe Institute is the world's leading education center for the study of human consciousness. Well, I don't know, you might have to duke it out with the Rhine, but well, but you guys could decide. You could be co-leaders. But for over 40 years, the Monroe Institute has been welcoming consciousness explorers from all over the world. And their non-dogmatic experiential approach allows people to pursue their own personal exploration of human consciousness. Jenny has seen firsthand what profoundly positive, life-changing benefits Monroe's programs have on a person's perspective. And she's thrilled to be putting her years of experience and heart into such an important mission, because the word in the grapevine is that she herself has had a near-death experience. So perhaps you can just share with us how you first became interested in matters of consciousness, and again, how the Monroe Institute contributes to the world's knowledge of this phenomenon, and maybe even give us an insight into your own experience. And first you'll need to unmute yourself, Jenny. Oh, there you go. Dawn unmuted you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I have been having experiences my entire life, as I was telling panelists earlier, but never really gave them much acknowledgement, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I began working at the Monroe Institute, very naive. A week into my new position, I took a course and it changed my life. It opened that doorway to that cosmic consciousness that holds a lot of the answers and knowledge that we're all seeking here as human beings, and it's trying to figure out how to maneuver and navigate our lives. So basically, you gave a good overview of the Institute in my introduction. So I feel like since I've been there, I've taken several programs myself, but I've also witnessed many of our participants and done several interviews and talk to them about their own personal experiences at Monroe. And every time you come there, you learn something new. And it really does connect you with that higher state of consciousness. We use an audio supported guided meditations, and you do them probably 4 to 5 times. We have a process where you talk about it. It allows you to assimilate your experience. It's really interesting because the non-dogmatic aspect is that we just give you the tools. You, by connecting with consciousness, by connecting with your higher self, your guides, you are unfolding your own life experience and coming away with knowledge that you might get in bits and pieces, but when you come to the institute or you take a program, you get it all right then, right there. And then you've got this time to sort of assimilate it in your life and take another program. And it really helps you to sort of unfold this journey that you're on, not just in this lifetime. I've taken Timeline, which takes you through several past lives, future lives, this life, and you're able to see from an outside perspective your total self and how it's played out through the continuum of consciousness. And so talking about expanded consciousness is one thing. Experiencing it and being able to use it and hold that space and explore it is a whole nother adventure. So I can't speak highly enough about what we're able to provide for people.
Well, thank you so much. And maybe later on, we will hear about your own personal experience. But thank you so much. But now we'll go ahead and we'll move on to Jim Fisher. Jim, who is not only an MBA, but he is also the founder of Consciousness Cafe. He's also a retired CPA. Okay, just so you know, he spent 17 years of his career in the healthcare industry, but he's been studying esoteric subjects since like 2001. And you'll be happy to know, John and Jenny, you'll be happy to know that he has attended multiple programs at both the Monroe Institute and the Rhine Center. So there you go. And Jim has also served as the treasurer for IANDS and currently serves on the IANDS Finance and Ethics Committee. There's a lot more to say about him, but I am just going to let him speak for himself. And Jim, maybe again, you can tell us what motivated you to be interested in this type of phenomenon and to start Consciousness Cafe and be so involved with IANDS.
My interest arose in the subject of surviving death arose about 1980. I was working in a company that serviced air conditioning systems, and one of my technicians had a near-death experience. He was electrocuted in a 440 volt rooftop unit. I didn't know anything about near-death experiences at the time, but I filed that memory away until I read Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life. And that prompted me to start seriously exploring the concept of survival. And as you mentioned, I've been to the Rhine Center and the Monroe Institute, and I've been on the IANDS board. So these organizations are important components of my journey. Consciousness Cafe had its beginnings in North Carolina, holding small in-person meetings to discuss issues relating to the breadth of consciousness. Our membership is now around 1,400 people. If you look at our meetup page, our introductory statement says, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." The exploration of that concept is what draws people to join our community and why many of our members are in attendance tonight. People who have an interest in learning more about Consciousness Cafe and connecting with like-minded people should visit our website. It's relatively new.
You just went mute for some reason. Don, oh, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I was just introducing the website that we're working on. It went live in November. People who go to the website will find recommendations for books to read, a directory of groups and organizations they can join. We're trying to become a hub for finding out more information. If you want to learn about other organizations like IONS, you'll find links in our website to these other organizations. We also recommend people become members of our Consciousness Cafe, and there's no cost to it, I might add. If you become a member, there are some benefits. One thing you can get is a stream of meditation that was created by Jose, along with some of his art. Members can also make recommendations for books you'd like to see added to our library. So if an individual wishes to create your own meetup group, give us a call or contact us and we'll help you through that. We're all about trying to facilitate an awareness of the broader aspects of who we are. So please visit our website, and best wishes from all the people at Consciousness Cafe in your explorations.
Thank you, Jim. That was lovely. And I'm sure many people are going to join you in Consciousness Cafe. It's such a great name, Consciousness Cafe. Congratulations that you got that URL. Anyway, and finally,
we have to note that the hyphen is in there. Make sure you put the hyphen in, or you won't.
Consciousness-Cafe. Very good. Thank you for reminding us of that. Okay, and finally, I have the honor of introducing to you my dear friend, who I will call the star of the show, the fabulous Jose Hernandez. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jose. He's going to tell you more, and then you're going to see more in the movie. But Jose was an electrical engineer and a self-described atheist and kind of a closed-minded skeptic. And when he was at the age of 46, after a minor accident at work, he was administered a medication in the ER that he was severely allergic to. And that one little mundane mistake, which caused his death, changed his life forever, because that was the beginning of a journey that shattered every belief in science that he had held dear. And after a very long and very grueling physical and emotional recovery, very hard, again, he had this experience. He was an atheist and he just didn't know where to turn. Like other people have said, maybe, I don't know if it was during this conversation or before we went on the air, so many people, they have near-death experiences and they just don't know where to turn. And somebody introduced Jose to IONS. And he was finally able to embrace his experience because he met other like-minded people who had had similar experiences. And he was able to embrace this new path in his life. And he also began creating art as a way to share his experience as a form of meditation, because he's going to explain it to you, but he tried to recapture what he saw on the other side through his unbelievable transformational art. And he also developed breakthrough mindfulness practice called inner immersion, which is engineered to help others just shed layers that are keeping them from connecting with their true selves, again, without words or dogma. So, and to date, Jose has worked with well over 1,000 people with the inner immersion modality. And he's actually worked with people who have addictions and PTSD and all kinds of people releasing blocks and traumas. This was not what he did before his near-death experience. And now he's just helping so many people in the personal development and transformational field. And again, I just want to say one more thing about his art. And his art is being exhibited in galleries all across the US, all across Canada, in private and corporate collections around the world. I mean, he's even in the prestigious Cleveland Clinic and other healing centers, because when you just look at his art, it's amazingly healing. So there's so much more I could say about Jose, but And by the way, I noticed that some of Jose's art was in the film, which is very smart of them to use, but I don't want to take up his time of sharing more of his credentials. So Jose, I know that we're going to be seeing an excerpt from the movie Surviving Death, the film in which we're featured. And in the film, again, you share your NDA, but perhaps you can give us a preview of that experience or provide a context for the film clip that we're going to see, or whatever you want to say, because whatever you want to say, I want to hear it. So everybody, Jose Hernandez.
Thank you, Deborah. You left me speechless. Is there anything left to say? Anyway, thank you for that. It's really heartfelt, and yeah, I mean, a near-death experience is not only life-changing, but it is in itself quite traumatic. And it causes a lot of thoughts. And I'm sure Leslie has probably heard this often. The experiencer often has nowhere to go. They're not sure even that the experience might have been real, that you know, and then the medical system that we have in place kind of supports the fact that it didn't happen. It was all in your head. It was drugs. It was DMT. It was, you know, your brain was still alive while your heart stopped. And so I did have a grueling experience. I died from an allergic reaction to a medication. So I suffocated. It took a while for that to happen. I wound up in hospital for 3 months in the critical care unit for 6 weeks, and with a prognosis that I'll never leave alive. So there is a lot of processing that happens after you kind of get through. I was in a way very fortunate that when I had my near-death experience, I went to this space where I experienced color and I became that. And whenever they hit a cold blue, and my logical brain would say, that's going to be me again, my spiritual half just kind of took me to that space where I saw the colors. And from my personal experience, and you know, this is anecdotal, it's just my opinion, going into that space and being present with the frequency of color, even though it was just a memory, was enough to begin to create it's kind of like fortified me. So it built back that thing that we know that we call hope. When you're in a hospital and you're in a very difficult situation, every day you're there, you become more and more hopeless. So I found that was kind of like nourishing me and bringing me back. And by the end, 3 months later, I walked out of there, and took me 5 years of going to psychiatrists to kind of come to terms with the near-death experience and embrace it as an actual experience myself. There was a lot of, you know, because I was so science-minded, it was very difficult for me to embrace that. And during that near-death experience, like Deborah said, everything I believed in was completely shattered. It was like I lived in a glass house, and all of a sudden, I realized I lived in a glass house, and everything I believed in was completely destroyed. And it created a lot of conflict within me. And I know we call it integration and things like that. So gladly, I did find IANDS and a place that I could hang my hat and like-minded people, and I was able to move forward. Allowed me to focus on the art, create this process. I work with a lot of rehab centers in South Florida, addiction centers, and with this program that we created, the Inner Immersion, and it refocused me. So it took me away from the actual near-death experience and saying, wow, what an amazing experience, that's life-changing. But there's a reason why we come back. And I think I found my calling when I was able to start painting. Now, understand, I never painted in my life until several years after my near-death experience. And so even in my own head, that's still incredibly interesting or mind-boggling in many ways. And I'm very anxious and excited to get your guys' questions out here, and so we could kind of get as many answered as possible. So many blessings to all of you that are out there. Our heart is with you, and this panel. You guys are amazing, and I'm honored to share this opportunity with you.
Thank you, Jose. So now, if you have questions, you can write them in the chat, and we will try to get to as many as we possibly can. You can also write them in the Q&A. Along the bottom panel, you'll see a little icon that says Q&A. You could write them there as well. We probably won't get to all of them, but we'll try to group the questions and get to as many as we can. And the first question is for Jose, and that is, well, we'll get right to the core of everything right now. 2 questions. Can you explain more about the feeling of love you experienced on the other side? Why don't we go with that for a second? Explain more about the feeling of love. Can you put that into words for us?
Well, I could try. The feeling of love really starts at that point where you're ready to cross. Well, in my experience anyway, I just felt totally consumed by this incredible sense of love and peace. Another sense was attached to it, and that was of acceptance, of being a part of. And it is so profound that it actually carried me. And if you could imagine, you're suffocating on a bed, you got people trying to intubate you, you got people doing compressions on your chest, trying to get your heart back, and you feel no pain, you feel nothing. You feel incredibly well. And just that sense of love and you know, that awe and wonder. But I want to share one moment with you just so we could understand and put it into perspective. And that was when I saw my body and I realized I was dead. I was standing in the corner of the room looking at this happening. And I said to myself, that's me and I'm dead. But if that's me, then who am I? And I hear this voice next to me, and ultimately I have to go say goodbye to my body, my physical body. And I will share that the sense of love that I felt for who I had been was jaw-dropping. It was just so intense and amazing. I realized this beautiful body that I had always been complaining about, that had never been good enough, that had always been somehow just didn't make it to the expectation that I had, or how I wanted to look, or what I wanted to be, suddenly was the most beautiful vessel that I had ever seen, and so worth living my life in it, because I was able to understand the gift that it gave me. And that was to live every moment of that life and see and feel and hear and love. And I didn't remember these dramatic moments in life. What I remember was these simple things: holding my little brother's hand, seeing a sunrise, all the magic that is in life every day, taking a breath. How incredibly beautiful and healing that is. And we do it so many times in a day, we don't give it a thought. And it just taught me to refocus. So what's important to me now is totally different than it was before my experience. Now, every second of every day has so much beauty and grace in it. And that's what you feel when you die. All of that, all at once, for an eternity, just, it consumes you. And I think that's what I took out of it. And I think if I have anything to give all you out there, that's that concept of loving every moment of being here with whoever, whatever. I think that's what makes life so incredibly magnificent and beautiful.
Thank you. And I think that message that all of us who are so critical of every little thing about our bodies, what a reframing for all of us. Thank you so much. And another question that I think is equally as important, After you had that experience, now what can you share with us about what you feel is the most important pursuit in life? What do you feel those of us who have never had that kind of experience, what do we need to know?
Well, I think the best advice I could give everybody is make happy thoughts, make good memories. Just embrace seeing a bird, your loved ones, your children, your grandchildren, whatever. Embrace those moments, because that's the only thing we take. Whatever I created in terms of materialism in this world, that stays here. We leave that here. Everything we do, we leave here. So even my art stays here. So in my mind, none of that is really mine. It belongs to this world, because we're going to leave it here. What the Creator allows us to take with us is our feelings, our emotions, and all those good moments, because there's a moment where it strips away all the negativity. So for us to cross, we have to be in what I think is a very pure state. We have to be completely spirit. And I think that's the best advice I could give people. Make happy memories, appreciate that little breath of air, opening your eyes, your little grandson, your grandkids, your children, whatever. If we don't have kids, whatever else we have out there, there's so much beauty and grace out here. Just watching a tree, the sun, anything, the stars at night. We are blessed with so much from Creator. You know, we have the ability to get ourselves warm when it's cold. We could do so many amazing things. Embrace that and make that your life. Make that the meat of your life. Whatever we make in materialism and things like that, yes, we need to do that here, but that is not what we're going to take with us. So make happy memories, as many as you can, whilst we do everything else.
Thank you, Jose. Another question is specifically about your art. Somebody said that they noticed that when you were talking in the film, some of your pictures were behind you. And also there's a picture on the wall behind you that they assume is one of the pictures that you painted after your experience. And they wanted to know that, do the colors have significance? This particular person noticed that your hat has some red in it, and then there is some red in the picture behind you. And does that reddish violet color, does that have a specific meaning? So can you talk a little bit about the different colors and what they might signify, or why you chose those colors?
Well, they do have meaning. You have to understand that my perception of color is very different from what it was before my experience. I believe color is as alive as I am. Color talks to me. Color is a spirit the same way I am, and everything else around me. And if you could imagine that we're surrounded by color, it speaks to who we are. So the colors I wear speak to who I am. What I draw, what I paint is what I'm trying to reproduce what I saw on the other side. So it's a little different, but yes, the colors do have significance. And it's one of the programs that I'm working with a couple of hospitals to try to get an incubator for research, so we could begin to identify what certain colors, what the impact is on us physically. We know they're impacting us. Now we have to understand why. So yes, I am truly believe that color, because it's all around me all the time, it's impacting me all the time, whether I'm awake or asleep or wherever I am. So yeah, the answer to that is yes, and they do have specific. If you want more information, send me an email or something, and I'll be glad to answer those questions for you.
Is there a place on your website for people to contact you? Because if so, we could put your website URL up in the chat right now. I think there is, for more information.
There is.
Yes, so that would be a good way to, if you want, because people are offering you speaking engagements, as well as other panelists speaking engagements. So somebody's opening a center not far from you in British Columbia and is looking for people just like you to speak. So that would be a great place. So if somebody, maybe Mr. Don, he's already done it, or Jose already put, innerimmersion.org is where you can go. Now, here's a question from Melissa. If consciousness remains after physical death, how do we know when someone has really died? Are the physical signs enough? I've read stories about people who have died and they're wheeling them to the morgue and then they sit up. And maybe John, because you're the one who has been doing some more scientific research on that, maybe John could take this question. If you could unmute yourself.
It's interesting because, as the film was playing, I went and I picked up this book called The Self Does Not Die. Because, if there is a continuation of consciousness, then the self doesn't die and there is no sign of death. The question is then, how do we describe physical death in the body? And this is what medical professionals are struggling with right now. I mean, 50 years ago, it was pretty clear. Our heart stops, we're dead. Our brain stops activating and we're dead. And this is where Raymond Moody started to recognize people were having experiences during this time. As we have progressed in medical care, people are going without a heartbeat, without brain activity for periods of minutes. In fact, there are some cases, someone was asking about the Pam Reynolds case earlier in the talk. The Pam Reynolds case is where she had an aneurysm and they drained all of the blood from her body in order to repair the aneurysm. And this is a medical procedure where they cool the body down so that it doesn't consume oxygen. It doesn't need blood flow during this period. So there was no way, if there's no blood flow, there's no way for someone to make memories. And yet she still had experiences. So this is something that indicates that it seems that there is something beyond the physical. How do we know if someone's physically died though? This is, like, as I said, medical science is starting to find that physical death is really a moving target. In some cases it happens immediately. In some cases it takes a longer period of time. Maybe someone else on a panel has other ideas about this?
Anyone else want to add to that? You can just unmute yourself and speak. If not, we'll move to the next question. Anyone else? If you're trying to talk and we're not hearing you, it's because you're muted.
Oh, just to add something to that, from a medical perspective, there have been no instances of resuscitation once rigor mortis sets in. And so, although that moving target of death, well put, John, by the way, is still a moving target, but rigor mortis seems to be the definition of death by anyone's estimation. And again, like I said earlier, I've never interviewed a corpse, nor do I want to, but but anything up to then is fair game. And I also want to say welcome to all of the near-death experiencers who have been chiming in, and God bless all the listeners, but particularly soft-hearted to those experiencers. So thank you.
And Kimberly, while we have you here, somebody asked, is your organization only based in Seattle, or are there IANDS groups in all parts of the US and or the world?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yeah, of course there are. Again, I'll give the website address I gave at the beginning of this program, www.iands.org. Seattle is the oldest one in the world, and by the way, it started with 4 people on a couch, and now we have a bean counter, more than 10,000 people have attended. But we're going on almost, it's like 38 years, so do the math. But there are support groups, and not enough. If you're interested in starting a support group, again, anywhere in the world, there's a great need. And the support comes from the International Association of Near-Death Studies, not out of Seattle, although I'm happy to help. It's my passion, but yeah.
Thank you so much. Yes, I used to, when I lived in Chicago, now I'm back in Chicago, I would go to all the IANDS meetings because I just found them so fascinating. Each near-death experience that was shared was more unique and exhilarating than the next, and you don't have to be a near-death experiencer to enjoy the Ions movie, although it's very soothing for people to be there who have had that. They can meet kindred spirits. And in the meantime, I wanted to just say, because there are so many more questions, one is very practical, and that is for those who don't have Netflix, is there any other way to see the film? Maybe Leslie or Jose can answer that. I don't really know what the answer is.
I hate to say it, but the answer is no for right now. It's just, maybe people have a neighbor or a friend that has Netflix. So I would just recommend that if you don't have it, the other thing is you can just subscribe for like 1 month, and it's maybe like $8 or something like that. So, if you want to spend the money to subscribe for 1 month and then discontinue it, you could, or I would recommend that you just find someone else that has it, because so many people do. You're bound to know somebody that has it, but there's nowhere else to see it.
And speaking of the Netflix movie, what Kimberly said about that you can't resuscitate somebody after rigor mortis has set in. One of the women in the Netflix movie was a woman who died in a kayaking experience. And she was dead for almost a half hour with no oxygen. And there was like 0 chance for her to live and 0 chance for her brainwave functioning to be restored. And yet they found her body by accident underneath the water. Somebody bumped into it when they were trying to retrieve her life jacket, and she's completely fine. She's actually a surgeon, and she tells her story. It's the movie is so fascinating, everybody. You absolutely have to see it. But 30 minutes is a long time, and somebody else was saying that there is somebody who went to heaven for 90 minutes. Here's a question for any one of you who would like to answer this. It could have been 90 seconds on planet Earth. Now, I know that woman died for a half hour. She was underwater for a half hour. So let's put her aside for a minute. Why is it, do you think, that people who flatline for 60 seconds come back and explain things that could have happened over days? Which one of you would like to answer that question? Because that always interested me. Anyone?
The 2 near-death experiencers have their hand in the air. I would like to address Mary Neal, is her name, the physician who was underwater for half an hour. She was in cold water, and there's something called the dive effect. So when the human body is submerged in cold water, systems shut down more. In Seattle Ions, we've had a 4-year-old who was underwater for almost an hour and is fine. Had a near-death experience, but is fine. Recently, also in Seattle, but it's where I live, a man who was trapped overnight on Mount Rainier and froze to death, but was thawed out. He is fine. So the chill is the thrill, so to speak. It's that's what can sustain us, or resuscitation. Back to that. Doesn't have to be by a physician or a paramedic. Citizen CPR, I beg everyone to learn CPR, because you can help someone have a near-death experience. So I just want to get that in. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Kimberly.
Yeah.
And that cold water drowning makes complete sense. And does anybody else want to grab the question about how you can flatline for 30 seconds or a minute, and then you come back and people come back and they tell days, I met this person, then I went here. Why would that be?
Well, Deborah, I think it's a simple explanation. And I think as human beings, we like to track everything and measure everything. And I think time is a construct of this world only. It's man-made. When I died, I was dead for 5 minutes clinically. My heart stopped. But my experience was of days being in another world. And I think that that's pretty common. And I think it's simply because to me, there's only one constant. It's the now. Whether I'm here or there, it was that constant. And I think we for some reason, we get caught up in time. And even here, we have the experience of expanded and shortened time. So if I'm really stressed because I'm feeling something, the time could come move very quickly. Like, wow, if I'm kind of like wanting something to happen, it just feels like that time kind of stretches. So I think it's more of a mental, of our physical brain perception. Because once we move on, the concept of time is totally lost there. I experience no sense of time. I experience being in this other space for days. So when you come back in body, 5 minutes, you're like, what? It's part of the adjustment that you need to make.
Somebody else asked, because almost all of you, I know Jenny talked about her near-death experience before we came on. I think it was with a horse, Jenny. Was that you fell off a horse? Maybe you could just tell it to us in a minute. And then I have a question for the people who have had near-death experiences from one of our people here. And by the way, if anybody on the panel sees a question in the chat or in the Q&A, which you could click well, I don't know if you can, because maybe I can because I'm one of the hosts, but down below, if there's any question that I'm missing that you would like to answer, please feel free to grab it, unmute yourself and say, I'd like to answer Herschel's question, or I'd like to answer John's question. Don't feel any compunction, but now I forgot what I asked Jose because oh no, it's Jenny. Your experience.
I was 12 years old, and I was exercising a horse down in a lower field, and they decided they were going to feed the other horses that were up way half a mile away, up a side of a steep cliff and in a pasture. And between where I was and the other horses, there was, the steep path that went up by the cliff. And there was a gated ring that we would walk, a walking ring that we would walk. So there were gates, there was a barn. So I was on the horse, and I hadn't tied the reins. And I guess the horse heard the other horses communicating that they were going to eat, and it took off. It took off like never before. And I was shocked and dropped the rein, and I couldn't get it. I'd never seen this horse run like this. And I'm screaming and trying to grab anything I could to hang on to the horse. It goes up the side of the cliff. Normally I wouldn't take the horse that way. Jumped the fence, went into the ring, into the barn, and I made it into the barn, into the stall, but the door that led out from the stall to the pasture was smaller, and it caught my head, and the horse continued, and I fell off. Clothes were caught on the horn of the saddle, ripped my shirt off. And that was all I remembered. That was all I really remembered until I was in the hospital emergency room, and I was having like bits and pieces of flashes of looking at myself being treated and going in and out and in and out. And then the next thing I knew, there was this beautiful bright light, and I felt this ominous presence. And in my mind, I guess based on my belief system at 12, it was God. And I heard him ask me, he said, Jennifer, which is my formal name. I go by Jenny, but Jennifer, are you ready to die? And I thought for a moment, am I ready to die? And I didn't know how to answer. I was 12, I didn't know, am I not? So I felt for some reason that I should respond, no, I'm not ready to die. And that's when I remember then coming back and being in a different perspective and looking up and seeing, the doctor that was working on me, and my sister who was standing there beside me, like holding my hand, for whatever reason in the room. I don't even remember why she was in that same room with me, but afterwards, being at home after I was out of the hospital, sitting around the dinner table, they were asking me how I was feeling, and I said, I'm feeling fine, a little sore still, and whatnot. And then I kind of just paused for a moment and I said, I died. And they all kind of stopped and looked at me and they said, what? And I said, yeah, I died. And then I explained that God had asked me if I was ready to die. And I said, no. And then I came back, and I had a knowing that I had come back for a reason, but I didn't know why. And most of the people at the table looked at me like I had two heads and kind of scoffed and said, well, that was probably the medication, or maybe you were dreaming, or almost as if they were a little bit frightened by what I had said. And my father was the only one at the table that kind of calmly looked and said, no, actually that can happen. And I carried that with me and only shared it a few times throughout my teenage years. But I always had this knowing. And then I had other incidents that happened after that, incidents that you couldn't explain, that, like a car taking me on a journey that I wasn't driving and the car was driving. And I mean, different things that I couldn't explain, but I didn't know what it was. I chalked it up to maybe it's guardian angels, maybe it's my grandparents, maybe, not knowing. And I've had multiple experiences and never really gave them much acknowledgement. Like I said, I just sort of thought, well, maybe they are my imagination, or maybe they are, maybe everyone has these thoughts and these feelings. And then I feel like the Monroe Institute found me. I really never looked into near death. I never looked into any sort of spiritual. I would get strange sensations from time to time, smells, reminders of people that I had known. And I knew in my mind it was my deceased stepmother trying to give me a message, but I would turn it away. No, I don't want to know. I would smell cigarettes and I would know who it was, but I never opened that line of communication. And until I went to the Monroe Institute. And I began working there, and a week later I took a program. I thought it was going to be a meditation program where we sit and we meditate, we use mantras, and we go to the spa and that kind of a week. And it wasn't. The very first exercise, you go into the check unit, you put the headphones on, and they instruct you to be open to anything that comes to you. So I go and I'm thinking, this is going to be interesting. I put the headphones on and I'm like, is anyone out there? Does anyone have any messages for me? I'm really playful and naive about it. And I think that's why I got so much out of my experience, because my very first exercise, I see a tiny bright beam of light, and I knew who it was. My sister had passed away almost 2 months, here I'm going to get upset, prior to that course. And I knew when I saw that light that it was her. And I said, Charlotte, is that you? And she said, yes, it's me. And then it got bigger. And she said, I just want to give you a hug goodbye. And we embraced in a non-physical way, but I felt every bit of it, that love that Jose had mentioned. And I asked her how she was doing and if she was okay. And she explained that she needed to move on. She couldn't figure things out down here, is how she referred to it. And I said, well, it's fine, it'll be fine. And I said, maybe we can connect again like this. And she said, no, I'm moving on. And that I was fine with that. I was happy that she was okay and that she was comfortable moving on. And I came out of my check unit and I was visibly upset, way more upset than I just got a moment ago. I could hardly speak.
And I'm going to ask you to just say maybe one or two more sentences because we only have like 5 minutes left.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So if you could just wind it up, because I think we get the essence of it. And it was very
but I guess since that moment, that door is now open and I've been able to connect with other people.
And that leads me to the next question, because so many people are asking in the chat. That was perfect that you brought us to that point, because so many people are asking in the Q&A and in the chat. They want to communicate with people on the other side. They want to have these, they want to have guidance from spirit guides. They want to, is there any advice maybe some of the other panelists could share, or maybe that's not your area of expertise? I know that John has studied it, but maybe just a word or two from somebody about how people can develop that if possible. And if not, we have another audio that we're going to play from Ricky. Jim, you're going to take this just maybe in 60 seconds because we have so much more to do in the next 5 minutes.
Well, we've talked a lot about near-death experiences, and they get imposed on people. But as Jenny's pointing out, there are opportunities to curate your own experiences. Monroe Institute is one place. You could look into holotropic breath work. I've explored alternate states of consciousness elsewhere, and I'm not going to recommend that anybody follow that course unless you really know what you're doing. But holotropic breath work is a good option, and there are other breath work alternatives. So you don't just have to listen to near-death experiencers, although I think that's very important that we do listen to them. The more broadly we can appreciate that we're so much more than a human being. You may be able to achieve these altered states and communicate with others. So go for it.
Thank you so much. And as you were saying that, people are just writing in the chat all kinds of other suggestions as to what people can do. Try the website, We Don't Die.
Deborah, and can I have one more suggestion for
Please, Leslie, yes.
What they're asking about is wanting to communicate with their loved ones on the other side. I mean, yes, we all want to develop our own ability to do that, but mediumship can be a really helpful step in that process. And if you can find a really good mental medium, and your loved one will come through and speak to you through that medium. I had 2 tremendous experiences like that, and they changed my life. So I would recommend people do that. The trick is finding a really good medium, but you can go to the Forever Family Foundation website, and they have a list of mediums that have been certified through very rigorous protocols that they have created, as well as the Windbridge Institute in Arizona. Those 2 places have lists of mediums. So I say it's just another way you can, if the communication is what people are focusing on, that's one way to do it.
And Leslie, can you put there it is, foreverfamilyfoundation.org. And there is something else that you mentioned. If you don't mind putting it in for in the chat, that would be excellent. And Jose, would you like us to play one of those video clips from Ricky at this point? I mean, audio.
I would, yeah, because she, being the maker of this film, I think she came at it from a very different perspective, and hearing her perception of it is really, really, from my experience, was helped me to understand how she kind of came at it. So I'd love to hear another one.
So Don, and remember, this is Ricky Stern, who is the executive director of the film.
So what has been your experience as one of the first mainstream studios to seriously tackle the subject of the survivability of consciousness?
Another good question. There's a couple challenges that we faced in making a series that looks at survivability of consciousness outside the body, outside the physical. One, it was really to get serious-minded researchers and doctors to participate, because I think there's been so much stigma attached to this kind of research over the years, that we really relied on Leslie Kean, the author of Surviving Death, her relationships with many serious-minded people who are doing this kind of work, to at least consider the possibility of going on camera and talking about their work. When you look at the series, it seems like, why wouldn't they want to talk about their work? But I think there's a lot of fear that it's going to be marginalized or made fun of, or, not presented, in an accurate or serious manner. And so that was really important that I convinced, or I portrayed to people that this is what I wanted to do, something that was respectful of your work. And I'm not, someone to pass judgment, but I'm not also someone to try to convince an audience that your work is more valid than other people's work. It's giving you the opportunity to the audience to see what is out there in this world of research, and also of anecdotal, experiences like Jose yourself. There are many, many people, many more than we hear of, who've had either near-death experiences that are very similar or relatable to the ones that are portrayed in the series, and or have had extraordinary medium experiences or signs, things like that. And I think, for me, it was just very important that I find authentic people who want to share their story because they want people to know that they're not alone, to feel that they can connect to the profound, life-changing experience, and not feel afraid to share it. And so that was part of my motivation to do it. And I would say that, interestingly, not so surprising, but you have audience members who are thankful. That to me was surprising. They're so thankful that we've done a series that looks at this in a serious light. And then I've got many haters, people who just are angry and vehement that this is not the truth and it's pseudoscience, and why are we presenting this? Well, you're trying to convince us of something. And I'm really not. I'm just asking questions.
And then the last
There is so much anecdotal evidence and a growing body of scientific study indicating that consciousness survives death. Considering death is in the future for every human being, how important is it for mainstream studios to begin to explore this topic and open up discussions around these issues?
Well, I think that the mainstream has approached, tried to tackle the subject of, life after death or survivability, but oftentimes it becomes like a circus show or a side act or some kind of fringe silliness that is pure entertainment and gets marginalized and scoffed at, and people feel stigmatized, that they've come forward and talked about this. So I think it's important that people have a platform to express themselves. I think the thing that impressed me the most in making the series is that individuals who are not seeking attention, they're not getting paid, they're not writing necessarily, going to write a book about their experience, will come forward and share these incredibly moving and profound, life-changing experiences, whether it's a near-death experience or connecting, where they feel they've connected with a loved one through a medium, or, had some kind of sign, or have a reincarnation story experience. That's what moved me. And that's what I wanted to just open up and share to an audience, so that an audience can, experience it and take it for what it is. And if they don't feel, that it was authentic for themselves, or they have questions, that's fine. But to not give this opportunity to, as this question states, so many experiences. There's so many people out there. I think if you asked, 10 people randomly on the street, have you ever had some kind of a sense of a ghost or a spirit, or, anything in your life where I think we all have. We've all walked into a room in a weird house or whatever and said, ooh, this doesn't feel right. There's a sense of something not right here. Or, or you've had a past loved one and all of a sudden you feel their presence. It's, even if you're not religious or you're not spiritual or all these things, I think I think we've all had something that makes us wonder, and that's what the series is about. It's about wonderment and awe of something that we can't necessarily know the answer to, but it's okay to ask the question.
Fantastic. I want to say thank you, Ricky, but she won't hear me saying it. But I will say thank you, Jose, for asking Ricky those very, very profound questions. And Jose, I know there are people on, I'm not sure when we're supposed to be ending. It was at 90 minutes or 2 hours, but there are so many more people who, very few people have left. So they must want us to continue to engage. But Jose, I would like again for you to, one of the things that I know about you, Jose, is that after you had that experience, and I mentioned this already, that you not only started creating this art because you were trying to recapture what it felt like being enveloped in that color on the other side. And by the way, you didn't ask me to say this, but I will say this. You can buy Jose's art, and I have a piece in my home, and so many people have shared the same experience, that it's like a meditation. I've been a meditation teacher for almost 50 years, and I've taught, I don't know how many thousands of people meditation. And there's something called a yantra in Hindu cosmology. And when you look at the yantra, you have a meditative experience, just like when you use a mantra. So a yantra is a physical mantra. And I have had experiences with those, but my experience with Jose's art of just bringing me into the infinite was more powerful than those ancient yantras. And I think that it's because you bring that infinity from the other side and you process it through yourself and onto the paper. Or why would you say in healing, that's why they're creating these healing sanctuaries with your art in hospitals around the, well, you live in Canada, around North America. What is it about the art that gives us this? I mean, I saw a testimonial from a grown man who was like in tears just from the experience of looking at your art. Why is that?
Well, that's a good question, because I honestly don't know. All I know is that I had this urge, this desire to reproduce what I saw. And if you could imagine not knowing how to paint, so how do you do this? But whilst I was in my experience in the color, it's almost like I was given a recipe or a blueprint of how I needed to do this. So I had to start with a black canvas. So the first thing I do is I paint the canvas black. And the reason I do that is because that represents creation. It's where everything is. In the empty space, and what we think is empty, what we think is nothing, what we think is only darkness, is what gives birth to everything that we know in this universe. And so I had to start there. So that's the essence of creation. Then I had to paint in multiple layers. So some of those paintings have 200-300 layers. So you paint over it and you paint over it and you paint over it. And that represents what we do as human beings. So when I'm a 5-year-old, I'm very different than when I'm 15 or 20, because the experience of my life causes me to build walls and barriers so that I insulate myself with protection. And before we know it, we have so many layers that we begin to lose the identity of who we originally were. So the art, in a sense, is made to allow you to recapture that essence of your origin, your spirit. So when I think of the color being alive and it's speaking to me, look at it this way, it's very easy. So I like this picture because I understand that picture's talking to me, that's why I like it. I didn't like this one so much, it didn't resonate with me. So what it was saying didn't resonate with me. So I look at that as a simple way to kind of do that. But when you look into the art, it's engineered to kind of reconnect you with your ancestors and your entire family tree. So as I look at myself and I look into the art and I try to find who I am there, what I'm doing is going back into the beginning. And the deeper I get into those layers of that art and the deeper I get into the art, the closer I come to finding myself. And when I begin to get closer to myself, I begin to see how we're all interconnected. We begin to experience that oneness that I experienced when I was dead. And, or let me just rephrase that, not dead, but truly alive. And so that's what the arts engineered to do. So it's really what I saw on the other side. You know, how it works, I can't say I know that. It does enough that there's multiple hospitals that are willing to do research, including Johns Hopkins, to create an incubator so they can begin to measure the impact that it actually has on us. And if it helps us mitigate pain, if it helps us deal with grief, if it helps us with PTSD, it's being kind of used in so many different ways. So I think it's a miracle. And I think that's what the experience to me is really more about that, about we came back with something. We have an experience of death and we leave something over there and we bring something back. So my desire is to take what came back with me and bring it into the world and leave it here. So those are my goals, but I don't know how it functions. I only know that it does.
Mm. Yes, and it does. And thank you, Don, for showing us some of that incredible art. And I know that it is available well, you can buy, I have like the real deal in my home. And yet I have seen some of the posters and the posters are so beautiful and so vivid. You frame them and you look at that and you have the same experience. There's prints, there's all kinds of things, but they could see that on your website, right? Interimmersion.com. And and if you don't mind, I just want to say one other thing, and then we have a couple more questions, but while we're here, I just want to say also that you teach this course, and it's called Dare to Dream. And I've gone through it with you. And I know Don, who is putting up the slides, has gone through it with you. And we both had the same experience, that this this Dare to Dream experience that you generated, because again, out of that desire for people to experience their true essence, experience what's really important in life. People are saying, how do we have the experience? How do we have the experience? And people are giving all kinds of advice. My advice, participate in Jose's Dare to Dream. It will compel you to change your relationships, change your life. Even men who have never cried since they were children are in tears after the experience. So they could also go to Interimmersions for that, or is there a different URL?
Yeah.
Yes, interimmersion.org/dare to dream. And if I'm not mistaken, were you going to give a coupon code for people to get a discount on your Dare to Dream experience? If
Yes.
so, Mr. Don, could you put the coupon code there for everybody, so you could go to interimmersion.org/dare to dream, and the coupon code is Dare to Dream 50, but it's squished together, so it's Dare to Dream 50, and it gives you 50 something off. Must be $50. I just made that up. What is it? Okay. So coupon code Dare to Dream 50. And it's so powerful, just so powerful. I remember going to bed at night, that night after Jose and I did it, and just tears going, because I really got my priorities straight during that experience. So very powerful. I have two more questions, and then, far be it for me to call it a day, because still people are wanting more. But for anyone, several people are saying that after they had a near-death experience, or somebody in their family had a near-death experience, their pet, like their cat or their dog, I don't know about their iguana, but their pet had it was like a completely different energy towards that person. Is it because the pet sees something different after somebody comes back from the other side? What would you believe about that? Jose or anyone else on the panel have any?
I cannot speak to that, but I can speak to pets in the near-death experience. And that's like a whole hour-long lecture I give. I've got more things to share about not just pets, but animals, all the way down to field mice, particularly from children, which is another subspecialty of mine. So how pets react to us after a near-death experience. I had a hamster named Toto, and Toto could care less. So I have no personal experience with coming back. But within, I would at another time love to share about how we reunite with our pets within a near-death experience, or maybe even when we just go the whole distance and die. We'll all be together again. Love is love is love. It doesn't matter if it's fins, feet, feathers, fur, we'll all be together again.
You know, I have to tell you, Kimberly, I had somebody who communicates with people on the other side, and I was so excited to talk to my mom and dad. And the first being that came through was my dog. And because the dog got out of the house, she was blind, she died, and I felt guilty ever since. And the first being that came through, they said, there's this little dog and it's black and white, and it wants to tell you, don't feel guilty. It chose to die. It didn't want to live as a blind, feeble dog anymore. And it left because it knew that you were going to keep trying to keep it alive. This person had no idea that I had a little dog. So I know that the dogs want to communicate with us too after they pass on. So, and it was so good because I did feel guilty, like it was my fault, but she took matters into her own hands. She said, okay, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm leaving. I'll figure out a way. So anyway, Kimberly, and again, people join IANDS. You'll get a lot of information about all of these questions that you're asking. And one other question, and I'm going to let Jose have the final word, but one other question that people are asking, and this comes up all the time, and that is, and it even came up in the movie, remember, with the lady who was having the baby and died. Well, I'm not going to give it away, but well, actually she died during childbirth. She says that she died during childbirth. And how do we get people who are complete non-believers to believe this? Or is it not our job and we should just love them? Does anybody on the panel because I guess people are frustrated with some of their loved ones just not giving any credence to their experience of having had a near-death experience. Does anyone want to take that?
I got a comment I'll share. I'd really like Leslie to step up and talk about it, but the Bigelow Institute is very interested in this subject. How do we convince people that these things, that this consciousness survives? And Leslie is going to be a judge in an essay contest. They're seeking people with requisite credentials to submit essays to the Bigelow Institute that is meant to explain how consciousness survives, provide some strong evidence or proof. Leslie, you want to comment on that?
Sure, yeah, it's the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies, abbreviated BICS. And there is a website, and he's offering very large prize money for people to contribute to this essay contest. The first prize is $500,000. So this is a man who's putting basically $1 million into this endeavor. He's a very wealthy businessman who's been interested in paranormal, whatever word you want to use, topics for forever, UFOs, and now he's really interested in evidence for survival past death. And so he's inviting people to submit these essays and awarding big prizes for second and third prize. And I mean, it's going to be an incredible experience for me because I get to read them all. And I don't think we could ever say that we'll find proof. I mean, that's probably too strong a word, but there's really good evidence out there. And the thing about this contest is it's sort of inviting a combination of experience with research. It doesn't have to be like these highly academic, PhDs that are the only people that are going to participate, or scientists who have done lab studies on telepathy or something like that. These are creative papers that people can write based on their own experience, as long as they can back it up and it's evidential. So yeah, I think it's a great thing because it's going to draw more attention to this from the mainstream. I mean, his motivation is, this shouldn't be a fringy thing. This shouldn't be just this, like John was saying, this small group. Well, I recognize all my friends in the movie. Well, yeah, that's because there's just a small group of us that are doing this. And this is the biggest question that faces all of us. So Robert Bigelow wants this to become a mainstream question that can be researched all over the world and discussed all over the world as if it was something important, which it is. So anyway, I'm really excited about this initiative. I'm glad you brought it up. And yeah, I would just encourage people to go read the website, whether you want to whether you want to apply to become a participant or not. It's just fascinating to read it, I think.
So do you think that people should just Google the Bigelow Institute, or how do we find out how do people find out if they want to submit?
I think BigelowInstitute.com, but if you look up Robert Bigelow Consciousness Institute, I don't know the exact, I should have looked before I came on. I think it's BigelowInstitute.com though. It's Robert Bigelow, the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Study. There, somebody just put it up. So if you go there, yeah, and it tells you if you do want to apply it, it tells you what the requirements are and all of that.
Very good. Thank you, Leslie. And I also wanted to mention that the Netflix series, there's 6 parts to it. And one whole part, if I'm correct, I only saw the first part where the 3 different people were featured. I think it was 3. And other people mentioning near-death experience, but there's like 5 more parts to it, right?
There's lots of subjects that are covered. It's not near-death experiences, it's the first episode. But there's 5 others.
Tell us what the 5 others are.
Well, there's 2 episodes on mediumship, which are probably a little bit too long. I mean, I think the general consensus is those 2 episodes have some problems, but they're great. But don't get discouraged if they seem a little long. And then the 4th episode is about after-death communications. And we go into this grief retreat where it's run by the Forever Family Foundation, where grieving people are learning how to make these connections that all of us want to make. And they follow people through that process. And then there's a section about apparitions. And then there's a section about end-of-life visions, which follows a hospice doctor who's dealing with all these patients that are in hospice, but having these visions of the other side and seeing their loved ones coming to help them cross. And then the 6th episode is about children with reincarnation memories that can be verified. And we go back to see some of these children who are now older, the 2 famous cases that people may have heard of, when we go back and visit with the children as adults and see how it's affected their lives. And there's one little boy who's actually a current case. He's 5 years old that we have in the show as well. So it's just so much evidence, and it's all pointing towards the same reality. That's what's so exciting about it.
Oh, thank you again, Leslie. And I just want to say, so many people are saying in the chat, dear all of us, and listed all the names. Everybody who made this gathering possible, thank you so much. In these moments, so much love is surrounding our evolving. How great and earth. And blessings and love and peace to you. Thank you so much for your love. So many people are just saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for this powerful presentation. And I think that also it was Jem from Consciousness Cafe said maybe something to ponder after this ends is to think about how we collectively are influencing the emerging awareness of who we are. And I think coming together in these types of gatherings, which Jose, thank you so much for envisioning. The movie could have just come out. You were a rock star in the movie and you could have just let it go. And I know you're going to be on Dr. Oz. We can't wait to see it. If we go to Inner Immersions and sign up for your website, will you let us know when the Dr. Oz piece is going to play?
Yeah, I definitely will. We just filmed it last Friday, and Leslie is also on with me, as well as Mary Neal. So there are several people from the show that were on that, and it's interesting because it speaks to current events, right? It was wrapped around the COVID We've lost 450,000 plus people already. What kind of a message could we leave? You know, and that was kind of like the core of it. And I think it's a time and a perfect time actually for that and addressing that. Coming from our fringe perspective, we're still kind of fringe. You know, people don't truly embrace the experience of dying or the survivability of consciousness. It's always an unsure, it's a question, it's an unknown. So, you know, I just want to say that, because Deborah did speak about the Dare to Dream program. And what's important about that is that I did that with my wife. She's a death doula. And I think one of the problems humanity has is that death is a taboo subject and nobody wants to talk about it. But just from my own dying experience and her experience working with all these people, and she was instrumental in working that program with me. So imagine laying in a bed, you can't breathe, you're dying, your brain is still working. And you're thinking about your loved ones, about all those lost moments, about all these things I should have done, all the things I should have said. And it broke my heart whilst I was actually there. And here I am struggling to breathe, unable to breathe, and my heart is breaking because I'm never going to see anybody that I love again. And the Dare to Dream program is a program that's engineered so you don't wind up where I was. You take care of these things that we need to take care of whilst we can. So it just identifies what is truly important in your life. And just ask the question, if this is the most important, these are the most important things in my life, how could I pivot to make them so? How could I create more time for them? How could I envelop myself more within that? And I think that's what the program's about. But everybody out there, when we start thinking about all the moments that we live and all the things that we want to say that we never say, you know, we have issues with our siblings, sometimes even with our parents, with all kinds of things. And for some reason or another, even politics becomes an issue where we lose friends and we don't speak with them anymore. But those are dear people to us. And all of a sudden you find yourself in a bed and you say, man, I can't believe I stopped talking to my best friend because, and now it's too late. There's no phone there. There's no way to contact. And in my case, I couldn't speak anyway. It's 2 a.m. in the morning. No one would get in the hospital in time. So I was concerned about dying alone. And I felt I was dying alone. To my surprise, I found we never die alone. And I think that's the other thing that was addressed in the Dr. Oz show, that question. So when I think of George Floyd, and he says, he calls out to his mama, to me, that was so simply, she was there. And that was his gatekeeper. So she was the one that was going to open his path to the other side. And it touched me so deeply. You know, it still touches me very deeply. I think about it, I get very emotional, but I know we never move alone. But whilst we're here, we struggle with a lot of issues, with even how we feel about ourselves. You know, we have to find peace. We have to find a way to forgive ourselves and do all these good things while we can. You know, I shouldn't have to be on the other side to get forgiveness from my dad. And yes, I'm grateful my life was changed because of it, but I could have done that here. And that is what I find to be the most significant things in life. And those are the things that we can change and do. And for whatever reason, ego, pride, whatever you want to call it, we don't do many things that we should do. And I think that is what life is truly about. It's about sharing the love. We're not here to take. We're here to give. Creator made us to give. We have the capacity to love and do all these things, so we need to do it. We need to share our love. You know what? Maybe we will get hurt, but I know when I close my eyes, I gave everything I had and I left it here. That's the way that I would love everybody to think. Because if we could do that, imagine the way this world would change. If we teach that to our little ones, instead of teaching them to become so guarded and so, oh God, I got to protect myself. If we could teach them, if we all did that, can you imagine the beauty and grace that we would experience in this world? We have the capacity for that. We are exactly what I experienced when I died. That incredible sense of love is honed in our heart. It lives there. It's our spirit. All we need to do is open that gate a little and set her free. And I would leave everybody with that. And you know, my death experience taught me to love life. I find life sacred, just as sacred as my spirit. And I think if we see life in that same vein and make life as special as it is and recognize it, what a breathtaking, glorious journey life is. If we just take 1 second to reset and think a little bit different.
I am speechless. That was so beautiful and so heart-opening. And everybody, now you see why you want to be with Jose and his Dare to Dream, because then you get to be with him more and hear more of his brilliance. And that was just exquisite. And I'm just going to ask, first of all, thank you, Jim and Leslie and Jenny and Kimberly and John and Ricky, wherever you, no, Ricky's not up there. Ricky's in New York. Ricky is not passed on. And Jose, I just want to say, Don, I think you have a slide that has the URLs if people want to get in touch. Is it all on one slide? The Rhine Institute, the Monroe Institute, the Consciousness Cafe, or am I mistaken that there's one slide so people could just take a screenshot of it?
Not with everyone, but I will post each link in the chat.
Okay.
And then I do have separate slides. And so when you end, I'm just gonna play some music and play the slides.
Very good. So each individual
Yeah.
in the panel has their own individual slide. And Don, and I want to thank Don for doing such a fabulous job, as always, holding this together. Don, we could never do these programs without you. You are always there to make everything run like clockwork. So thank you so much. And most of all, I just want everybody to give a shout out to Jose, who pulled this all together, and your art, your classes, and just you as a human being. You're making such an impact on the planet at a time when the world really needs it.
Is
So-
this recording going to be available?
And yes,
Yes,
and we are
yes.
going to send this out to people who signed up. Yes. Right, Jose?
Yes, and Jim, Kimberly, Leslie, everybody that's on here, John, and please, you know, I love to hear a final word from each one of you. We still have so many people on, and I know we have to end this because that's what we have to do. You know, unlike life, it never ends. And,
Right.
and this is just a continuing saga. I love you Deborah, you're so amazing. I love you. I love every one of you. I think this is what makes the world special.
So would
This is what makes the world special. Just taking these moments, we get together like this and we could share and tell others, here's where we are. So please, everybody, take a moment to say 1 or 2 words. And I think we're going to leave the chat open for a little while so people can continue to
Yes.
exchange information and things like that. So I think that'll be great.
So each person, just 1 or 2 sentences, like that. You guys can do it. Who wants to go first? Jim, you're going to go first because you are the one that's unmuted. No, I won't call on you. You might want to think. Who wants to go first? Wave. Jenny, unmute yourself, honey. Go.
2 sentences. I would just tell everyone to stay open, keep your heart open. That spirits, loved ones, consciousness speaks to you in many ways. It could be a smell, it could be a feeling, it could be seeing something and remembering, and then getting that feeling. So it never comes the way you expect it. So stay open to receive.
Perfect. Well
I
said.
would say we're all evolving. We're spiritual beings first and foremost, having this experience so that we can evolve. And we're all one, so we want to support one another. It's instead of being isolated, I'm sure we're all moved by what Jose had to say this evening, that collective feeling that we had. If we can take that and help others understand the oneness of it all, that's what's important.
Beautiful, Jim. Thank you. John?
So first, I wanted to thank Jim and Jose for inviting me to be here. This has been a really great opportunity and really great for the Rhine community to have an exposure to these topics in such detail. The other thing I want to do, the Rhine is in the same building as IANS, the International Association of Near-Death Studies. And so I've attended a lot of their meetings and a lot of their conferences, and it is an amazing and remarkable experience. Anyone who has had a near-death experience, I would encourage you to look into these meetings, and I hope that Kimberly can speak about it some more, because it is like a homecoming, feels like people are coming home. So I would encourage people to look into that in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
I'll segue from that and say, thank you for bringing that up, John, because it's true. My claim to fame within the with the organization called the International Association for Near-Death Studies is that I've never missed a conference. And that goes back to the first one in 1984. 83. And for me, it's like being a tea bag steeped in liquid love. I mean, I wouldn't think of missing a conference. I wouldn't think of missing an IANS support group anywhere in the country. It's love. And if I could sign off with anything right now, and again, thank you for bringing up the conferences, John, and the groups and all that, is that it's just all about love. It boils down to that. And the harder it is to love, the bigger the lesson, everybody. And there's a lot of opportunities for those lessons out there right now. So to quote one of my favorite authors and one of my favorite characters in one of this author's books, God bless us one and all.
Thank you, Kimberly. And you should always wear red. With that red lipstick, you look gorgeous.
Thank you. I'll get back to my red nose then.
And your red nose, of course. Leslie.
Well, I don't really know what to say. I'm just grateful to everybody on this panel. I really enjoyed listening and absorbing the energy from people tonight. And I just don't know what to say, except I love being on this journey. I love connecting with everybody. I do have a Facebook page if anybody wants to come on there, and we do a lot of discussions and stuff on Facebook. And my heart feels opened up by this, and I just want to thank everybody.
Thank you, dear. Well, I guess that leaves me, and I will probably most of you, a lot of my students are on here, but I have a seminar company, and I teach a seminar called Yes to Success. And it's not like success about going out and getting, the big house and the nice car. It's about inner success. And one of the stories I tell is about somebody who dies and comes back, and the being of light who this person interacts with says to them, after he sees everything that happened in his life, and the being of light says, when you get to this side, you find out that the only thing that matters while you're on earth is how much love you give. And I would say that this has just been an amazing immersion in love. So, and with that, I will let the wonderful Jose have the final word, and then we'll say goodnight.
Okay, all right. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I think we have been blessed. I have been blessed to know so many beautiful people, and that they become a part of my life. And it's because of them that I'm here now. It's because they gave me the ability to do what we're doing. And I want to speak a little bit here to women. Men, don't take this the wrong way. I feel that I am being carried on the shoulders of the most amazing women because they are so open. And they have helped me to touch base with that side of me, which as I was growing up, I was taught to completely shut down. My humanity, call it my, the woman side of me, call it whatever you like, but it allowed me to shed a tear and be proud of it. Feel no shame in being human. And I think that's also very important for all of us out there to understand, and especially as guys, because we grow up, and a lot of women are taught to hold their emotions, to kind of bunker them in somewhere. And I just want to say, be you. Be you. And when you're you, all you're going to give is what you have to give. And what Creator, the seed that Creator puts in every one of us is just love. And once we could be who we are, that's all we could give. So please be you and give all your love. And I want to thank you all for making this possible. For every one of you out there, I know you're not on the panel, but each and every one of you could be, because you all have beautiful stories to share. It's not only us here. And I want you to understand that. And I know that's a fact, because many of you have had NDEs, you've had all your own struggles. We could do this panel with 100, all of you. And who knows, maybe one day you all will get there. So let's see what happens. Anyway, many blessings to all of you. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, panel. My love goes with you all. And I think Don's going to keep the thing open, and please keep sharing and communicating back and forth. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. God bless.
God bless.